Hi guys, welcome to this tutorial on an introduction to Terraform, beginner's guide. This is with Lexington Consulting. Lexington Consulting is a staffing and IT consulting company. All right, so let's get right into it. Terraform, as you all know, it's an infrastructure as code. Basically, it's a tool that allows you to push infrastructure configurations without clicking around your infrastructure. So, for instance, if you're pushing EC2 instances, databases, S3 buckets, CloudFormation, Lambda, all these configurations in AWS, you can do all that through code. So you pre-configure the configurations inside your script, push the script to AWS, and AWS does everything for you. So it's very useful, especially when you start dealing with big organizations where you can't make single edits by going through the hoops. All right, so let's go to terraform.io. That's the site. So the first thing that you want to do is Terraform can run on Linux, Macs, or Windows. So I'm just going to run it on Windows. The concept is the same. The installation process is pretty self-explanatory. So once you get to terraform.io, the downloads, Windows 64-bit is what I'm using. It gives you that download Terraform zip file, unzip it. I unzipped it to the C drive, and I unzipped it to this folder. It only gives you one file in there. It's a terraform.exe. Of course, the process of installation of Terraform is different depending on your platform. Linux, you would get the URL from here. Depending on what Linux you're using, you grab the URL and do a wget and download it and move it to the correct bin folder. In Linux and Macs, the instructions, I think you use well, a similar platform. I forget what you use for Macs, but same concept. Once you install it, that's the key part. Once you install it in Windows, there's some extra steps that you have to follow here. You have to add it to the system variables, which I already did, but I'll just show you how I did it. So I go into my control panel and then system, then advanced system settings. Then when I do that, it gives me this system properties, and then I go to environment variables. When I click on environment variables, the only piece of information that I'm interested in is system variables. And when you go to system variables, there's a path option there, which is slightly grayed. And you just want to add your Terraform location here in the path and hit OK, and all will be well. Of course, in my system, I already added it, so nothing to worry about that. But yeah, once you add that, you should be good to go. And then for me, I'm using Visual Studio Code just because the way it presents things is much better than command prompt. But you could run Terraform from your command prompt. I just prefer not to do it because it's just not user friendly. So if you want to download Visual Studio Code, that's an option for you. This is not necessary for Macs or Linux. I think Linux, you should be able to run commands just within the Linux or Ubuntu command line, as long as you're in the right folder and that you've added the Terraform installation to the correct bin. But anyway, for me, so I downloaded Visual Studio, which helps me because it presents things in a much better light for me. So I'll open that up since I already downloaded it. Before I do that, I'm also going to go ahead and create a Terraform project folder. So that's another important thing that you need to do, is create a Terraform project folder. Depending on what, it doesn't matter what operating system you're using, you need to create a Terraform project folder. So we're going to call this one Lexlin Consulting. So it's in my C drive. Perfect. That's where all the Terraform files are going to be kept. So I'm going to go to File, Open Folder, and I'm going to go to Lexington Consulting. Select that and open it up. Do you want to save the changes? I won't save that. This was a project from earlier that I was working on. So here we got the folder. The folder is empty. So we're going to add a file. The two types of files that the file that Terraform stores its variables in is .tf file. So I'm going to call this lexlin.tf and put it in there. So a few things about Terraform that we want to learn is that Terraform has different providers. And providers are the different companies or different platforms that it can communicate with. When you come to Terraform, so you got AWS is a provider, Google Cloud Platform is a provider, Azure is a provider, Oracle is a provider, which means Terraform has their documentation on how to communicate using Terraform. And you can do a Google search and say Terraform providers, and that will give you a little better understanding of, you can browse the different providers here. So here we are. So each one, the way Terraform communicates with each one is different. So the command line structure is different. So you can do AWS, Azure, Google Clouds, Oracle, Kubernetes, and more being added every day because Terraform is so user-friendly. It's a declarative scripting tool, which makes it easier to use and leverage because you don't have to really come from a programming background. But these are the providers. So I'm interested in AWS, of course. So that's the one I'll be looking at. The first thing I want to do is, okay, so we want to look at the configurations. And it has your documentation here. You can either go about it this way or just do a Google search and say, Terraform, AWS, how do I connect to the provider, and things like that. So in my instance, let's do, okay, so let's go to Google and then we'll do Terraform, AWS, access, or provider, whichever one gives you the best. So let's click the first one. This should give us the documentation. So this is how I connect to my AWS. So the provider is AWS, the region, I have to choose all that. So I'm going to grab that snippet of code and put it in my VS code here. So I'll paste it here. Of course, I don't want it in West, I want it in East, and I want to put that one. And then of course the access key and the secret key. I have AWS already. I don't know if you guys have AWS, so I'm already logged in. But you can sign up for AWS for free, get the free tier. You have to put in your credit card. It won't charge you, but you will have access to AWS and have all these cool tools that you can practice and not have to pay for unless you keep it. Okay, so I am in my AWS. The account that I'm using is an admin account. I don't never use a root account to manage AWS for security reasons. So let me show you how to get the secret key and the access key per documentation. It's saying us we need the access key and the secret key. So here we go. So once we're in AWS, go to IAM. I've got 3 users. So let's look at test user. So the test user here, I just created. It's got your security credentials. And it's got the access advisor. Just tells you like what things you need. So this is my access key ID. However, I can't get the secret key, so I'm just going to grab that. I'm going to copy that. I already grabbed it earlier, but I want everybody to kind of see where it's coming from. Okay, so the test user already pre-created. You can also create your user within IAM AWS, but make sure they have the admin privileges. So here, so I'll grab that, the access key, because I need that, and then I need the secret key. But the secret key is something that's presented to you when you're creating a user now, if you already created the user, getting that secret key will be a bit of a hassle. So you can do create access key, and this will create a new access key for you. You can download the CSV file, and that way you don't have to lose it. But I'm aware this is a test user, so I would just go ahead and grab this information, the secret key, and the access key, which is what you need to connect to AWS, and that is for Terraform. So I got that. I have to make sure, of course, that okay, we'll make this other key inactive. Make inactive because we're not using it in. So deactivate that key. We only have one key here that we have, whose access secret key we have. Okay, so remember the user, test user, has to be an admin in order to be able to access AWS and make all the changes. Okay, so we have that information, and we go back to our VS Code, and this is why I love VS Code because of the way it presents the information. So my secret key, paste it in there, and then my access key, grab that, paste it in there. There's a more secure way of doing this, but for practice reasons, we're going to present this information right there. But you can pass all this information via a file or document that you save this credentials in, so you don't have to present it like that. Okay. But anyway, you can look at the documentation on how to do that. All right. So first thing we're going to do with Terraform is we're going to create an EC2 instance. So the stages within creating something out of Terraform. So of course, the structure is, first of all, I connect to the provider, which is what we're doing here. Then the next structure is to call the resources that I want to create. So in this instance, I want to create an EC2 instance. All right. So how do you create an EC2 instance? Come to the documentation. You can either do a Google search as well and just do Terraform EC2 instance, and it will bring you here. So in this instance, we are trying to create an EC2 instance. So scroll down the list, run the EC2, and there's a lot of things you can create here. You can create transit gateways, but the one we're interested in is EC2 instance. All right. So we have it right here. Yep, I think this should do it. I'll take this one. It's calling the resource AWS underscore instance, giving it a name, and calling the AMI type, and then the instance type, and then tagging the name. So we'll go back to our Terraform here. I'm going to call this web server lexlin, and I'll show you how to get the AMI ID or the AMI information. This tag is something that we can choose ourselves. Web is the tag I'm going to give that. All right, so how do I get the AMI ID? So come back into AWS, depending on what I want to create. So I'm going to C2, and then I'm going to go to instances. And I'm going to say launch an instance. Right now, there's only one instance. My AMIs, quick start. All right, so here we are. So there's an Amazon Linux 2 AMI. There's a Mac OS. There's a Red Hat Linux, and Ubuntu server. There's a Microsoft server. Doesn't really matter for me. For this test, I'm just interested in showing how to get that ID. So this is the ID that you pick out from the AMI you're trying to create. So this is a Linux. If we were trying to create, of course, Ubuntu would grab this AMI. Forget about the 64-bit piece. That's not relevant. All right, so we come back here and say my AMI is, I'll put it in quotes, is this. And of course, I picked it up from the AWS. And of course, once you pick the AMI here, you can see what kind of instance type you want. So let's say, for instance, if I pick that AMI, and I'm of course going for T2 micro because it's the free tier one, but if you wanted T2 medium, then you would select that as well, and then you would specify in the instance type T2 medium. So here I am interested in the T2 micro or T3, so let's change that. All right, so I'm pretty much done now. Of course, once I'm done, this is for creating just an EC2 instance. I'm gonna go ahead and hit save here, and then I will open up a terminal so I can run the commands to go ahead and complete this. And you see how smart VS Code is. And I've selected terminal, run terminal. It automatically opens up into my Lexlin project folder. So this lexlin.tf file is where I declare everything that is going to be happening or that I want to create, how I want to connect, and the provider I want to use. If I was talking to Google GCP, then of course that provider name will change. These instructions might not be the same for Google Cloud, so that might be different. But for AWS, this is what we do. So there we go. I got my AWS, I got my access key, I got my secret key picked out from the user who has admin rights. I've named my web server. I'm calling this resource, and this is the particular AMI I'm interested in, the instance type, and I'm tagging it. So there's four commands that are relevant when you're running Terraform. The first one is Terraform initialize, which initializes your project folder and all the files that are under your project folder. And then the second command that you run, and you have to be running in this order. Once you run the initialize, you don't have to keep running it. When you make changes to it, you want to run it once. And then you run a Terraform plan. Terraform plan checks the TF file and sees if what you're trying to create is already existing in the cloud. Well, in this case, AWS. And then there's Terraform apply, which basically says everything that I've declared here, I want to apply. I want to create these resources. And there's a fourth one, which is Terraform destroy, which says everything that I created, I want it to be deleted from the cloud. So let's go from there. So let's initiate Terraform init, and that's initializing all the plugins for AWS. All right, so initialization is done. Now we're going to do Terraform plan, which is going to check the TF file and see, okay, this instance you're trying to create, is it existent? Okay, so run into an issue. Terraform AWS error validating provider credentials. So basically saying these credentials you provided me are not working. All right, so let's go back and check and see what happened there. All right, so go back to AWS and let's go back to IAM and see what we might have missed here. Actually, let's check this notepad. Make sure we have everything here. All right, so we have 3 users. We have Terraform test user is the one we're using. He has administrator access, security credentials, and I see where the problem is. The access key are different. This one ends in M, and this one ends in 5. And the one we're using here ends in M. So that's a problem. So let's go ahead and update that in the code. So we'll go back here. It's not supposed to end in M because that one has been deactivated. So once we make the change, hit save. As you can tell, very user friendly. So let's run Terraform. Just initialize again. Let's Terraform init just to make sure that nothing is missing here from the first time. And then Terraform plan. And this time it's creating a state. Okay, so it's saying, okay, all right, you're adding one resource based off of your command, and the one resource that you're adding is that web server. All right, good. We're making progress. Terraform plan. After that, apply. I'm pretty comfortable with the results from the Terraform plan. Now the apply says, okay, now we're about to make that change. Are you sure? And say yes. So my instance is being created. It's called web server Lexlin and has a tag of web. So it's creating that. That's one of the resources we're going to create. And then from here, we're going to create an S3 bucket. So let that complete. It's talking to AWS and creating those resources. It's much quicker. This is much quicker than going into AWS and making those changes. Much faster. And you can imagine if you're creating several resources. So it says it completed. That's good. How do let me go verify that. I go back to my AWS. EC2, and then I check my instances, and it should be creating web. That one we just created, it's initializing. All right, so now let's go do let's do an S3 bucket. So we can do a search right here, S3 bucket, S3 bucket, and it will tell us how to do it. So I'm talking about an S3 bucket here. I'll come in here. This is the one I want to create. I'll grab that code and then I'll change it. So let me go back to my Terraform script, paste it in there. It's an AWS, that's the resource. The name, I'll call it Lexlin S3, and my bucket, the environment is dev or web. Let's call it dev web, for lack of a better term. My TF test bucket, and the ACO is private. So again, I don't need to initiate here, but I can do plan to see what I'm adding. And once you get better with this, you don't have to do all these things. Terraform plan. No changes. Infrastructure is up to date. The reason it's saying that is because I didn't save. So let me save. I'm creating an S3 bucket called Lexlin-S3, and the bucket name is that. All right, so let's do our plan again. It's refreshing the state, and the plan is just going back and say, okay, you're trying to add this. Let me verify that this doesn't already exist. So, and then apply is just making sure that that applies. Okay, so I'm gonna say yes. Click yes on there, and that's okay. So it's telling me the bucket already exists. So let's change this. Let's put a 1 after that, TF1, and then let's run it again. All right, so save, and let's see here, and then rerun it. Terraform apply. I don't need to do a plan. I'm just gonna skip it all the way to apply. All right, so yes. Authorization header is malformed. Okay, what is that? Oh, so authorization EU Central. Why is it giving me that? It's expecting EU Central AWS S3 bucket. No. All right. Let's see about this. All right. So it's telling us it's expecting EU Central. All right. Let's grab this error message. Let's do a little research on that. Authorization header malformed. All right. That's the beauty about Terraform is that it's got a good support base. So let's see what it says. So there's this response on GitHub. It says Terraform remote config backend authorization header is malformed. Here's status code. I'm using the same access and secret keys I normally use, so this seems like a bug. No, that's definitely weird. I'm having the issue on the latest version. What version did it go away on? 0.63. All right, let's check here. They're saying, some people are saying this could be a version issue. Okay, so let's see what other people are facing here. We can skip this and go to other formats. I know I've been able to successfully create this in the past, so this is kind of new. So let's change the name. Let's change the name from Lexlin S3 to, let's just call it B. Private, tag, everything else remains the same. We'll say save, and then we'll do Terraform plan. Terraform plan didn't complain, so refreshing, comparing the state, and then we'll say Terraform apply. And if that errors out, we can skip this and just might be a bug with the current version, and we can do other things. All right. So in the meantime, this is erroring out for some reason. Not sure why, because it's worked for me in the past. So let's do this. So let's go to a different tool that we can configure. So this was an instance, so we created an EC2 instance. Now let's create a VPC. So search for VPC. How do we create VPCs? All right, so we're going to do AWS VPC resource, call the resource, and then tag it like this other one. So I'm going to go with that one. So let's go and paste that. Change the CDI to 175. Change that to main-Lexlin. Change that tag to main-LXL. instance tenancy. So we're creating a VPC now. So let's save that. And let's do Terraform plan, see if it picks up. Of course, it's going to pick up that we're adding a VPC now. Oh, good. So let's go now to Terraform apply and see where we go here, refreshing the state. And when I say yes, and it's creating everything. All right, created. So we can go into AWS and check the instance. We just created a VPC, so we're gonna look for VPC. Let's go to VPC, and it should show us that. So your VPCs should show up right here. The one that we just created, main-LXL, with this CIDR of 10.175 is now showing up there. All right, now let's create something else. One thing to note about Terraform, if I were to remove this block and hit apply, what this would entail is, to Terraform, this would mean you do not want this VPC anymore. So it's the equivalent of deleting. So if anything is not on the script, that means it should not be created by Terraform. If it was existing before this, then Terraform would go ahead and delete that. Okay, so let's do, so we created a VPC, created an EC2 instance. We can even create a database. Let's do a database. So let's go to database, and we're going to search for RDS. Of course, the reason I know is because I'm very familiar with AWS. So we're doing an AWS DB instance. So we're going to go through this and let's grab this. So we're creating an AWS database instance. It's a MySQL. We're locating the storage, the engine version. We're describing all that. And then we're creating username and password, doing this other parameter groups and snapshots and more. So this command takes a lot longer, but let's go ahead and work on it. So let's do this. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab that, paste it. Okay, so it looks like it didn't grab. So let's grab it, delete that. Let's come back here and grab that, paste it on there. So we're creating a database now. And I'm gonna change this from default to LXL default. And then the rest of that stuff is fine. I'm not too worried about it. So same concept, you save and then apply. I don't think I need to plan anymore because I know what I'm already adding to. So it should tell me I'm adding one item. So click yes. This takes a little longer to run. So while that's running, you can come back to the documentation here. So just go through different settings here. You can do your S3 bucket. You can do any resource that's available in AWS. It can be configured right here. Data sync, S3 outpost. So we're doing RDS now. Redshift, security hub. You can create security groups and assign them. So it's very comprehensive, very comprehensive. So let's get back to this, see how this is going. So it's still creating that. So main things to remember while this is going through is you initialize your project folder using the Terraform. You use Terraform plan to compare what's in the .tf file with what's in the cloud. Make sure you have your access key, secret key. Make sure you're pointing to the correct region, and then start calling the resources. Once the Terraform plan works, do the Terraform apply, which applies all the configurations that, and then from there you go to Terraform destroy, which I'm going to talk about, and that is just essentially destroying everything that I've just created, or everything that's been created by this one script, destroying that. And you can see the files here. Never make changes to these files directly, like the TF state and the TF state backup. Never make changes to those directly. All you do is work within the .tf file, and that's it. Let's see here how that creates. So we created an EC2 instance, called that resource, tagged it, gave the instance type, created a VPC, called it that, CDI block of the instance, tenancy type, and the tags. This is all documented, of course, so if it doesn't make sense, it's not the end of the world. You can go ahead and look at the documentation. It will explain further. And this is the good thing about Terraform. It cuts down your time. Instead of you going into EC2 and selecting this option, selecting that option, selecting that. Imagine if your job was to create 20 databases today, and then you had to go into AWS and create database 1, create database 2, create database 3. It would take such a long time. Whereas you could code all this, choose the engine version, the class, the name of the database. You create the username and password to accompany that, and put it in a script and run it, and you'd be done with it in 10-15 minutes. That's the beauty of it, and it works with Oracle, it works with Kubernetes, it works with all these other big problems. Close the door, honey. Okay, so 4 minutes still going. In the meantime, we'll come back here and see what's been created. So we're gonna go to RDS and check on that. So RDS, and we look at the databases, and there is the database that's being created right now. So US East, DB identifier, and the VPC, put it in a default VPC. It's a MySQL database, and it's been created. All right, so let's go back to Terraform and then say, okay, all this that I've created, I want to destroy it now. So say, for instance, a project came to an end, come in here and say, all right, I don't need that anymore. Of course, I don't need it for sure because I don't want it to charge me. So I'm going to go Terraform, destroy. And what it's going to do is going to basically blank out everything that was created prior. We can go back into, let's say, yes, I definitely want to get rid of everything that I just created. So everything that's been created in this .tf file is going to be deleted from the cloud. So I can come in here and say EC2. Let's check the instances that are still running. It should say terminated. All right, it says it's shutting it down, so it's in the process of terminating it. Then we can go to VPC. This should probably be already deleted. So our VPC should be gone. Yep, we're down to the default one. The one that we originally created has already been removed. And we can go to RDS and say what databases do we have there. Might take a little longer to create there, but let's see. Okay, databases. All right. Oh, looks like it's already been deleted. Deleting status. So our Terraform destroy is doing what it's supposed to do. And like I said earlier, and if you don't want to just use the Terraform destroy, you can edit the .tf file where you remove all these resources that you created and hit save, so there's no resources being created, and then hit Terraform apply. And what that would do is Terraform would interpret that you do not want these EC2 instances, this VPC and this RDS. You do not want those anymore, so it would delete them. So that's another way to do it. All right, folks. So that was about Terraform. Just gotta remember Terraform initialize, Terraform plan, apply, and then destroy. And then remember .tf file. That's where you create all your Terraform code. Never make changes to the Terraform state. And that's about it. If you have any questions, post in the comments and we'll answer them right away. Happy learning.